Greetings. I'm Addie Banks, and welcome to Let's Talk Race Now, where we talk to people from all walks of life, sharing their racial and ethnicity truths. I believe that everybody, regardless of social rank, position in the community, or ethnicity, must be heard in solving America's race relations solution. So let's talk race now. Today, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Mildred Dalton Hampton Henry. She is the author of From the Ashes I Rise, Dare to Do the Impossible. Now, that book title should give a hint to the extraordinary woman who has blazed trails throughout her life. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm pleased.
About Dr. Dalton. Mildred Dalton was born on a farm, a family farm in Tamo, Arkansas. Slavery was part of her American family history. She was the fourth child in a family of three sisters and one brother. She was delivered by a midwife. Life on the farm in a segregated South for her included picking cotton, milking cows, and starting school at a two-room, pot-bellied stove building where her mother was a teacher. Black public schools at that time were inferior to those of whites. They received the old books, discarded by white schools. But this was made up for by caring Black teachers and community members who invested in teaching them to succeed. Dr. Henry stated that she did not have a white teacher until she attended graduate school. The journey. Mildred Dalton finished high school in spite of being unable to walk every summer for 8 years due to an ailment on both feet. After completing Washington Technical High School in St. Louis, Missouri, Mildred entered AM&N College in Pine Bluff. 2 years later, she married and dropped out of school. The family moved to Minnesota. Unfortunately, the marriage did not endure, and in 1969, she returned to Arkansas a single mother with 4 children to support. Never say never, and no, you can't. Mrs. Dalton re-entered college and graduated in 1972 with a bachelor's degree in music education. She did not stop there. A gifted student, eager to learn and advance. A master's degree in counseling was earned at Southern Illinois University and a PhD at SIU Carbondale. We will hear more about the journey that landed Dr. Henry in San Bernardino, California, hired as an assistant professor at California State University, and retiring in 1995 as a full professor and Professor Emeritus. I will let her tell you about Provisional Educational Services, the nonprofit she founded. I will share her adoption of the Roman rule. The one who says it cannot be done should not interrupt the one who is doing it. I like that.
Yes.
I give a warm, warm welcome to Dr. Mildred Henry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share. I hope that something I say today would motivate and would encourage someone who may have been told, you'll never become, just as I was told. You can't do this or you can't do that. You know, I never shared in those remarks. One of the things, and then I'll go back and do my early life, but one of the things that have motivated me throughout my life and that motivated my mom was some words that were said to her by a white real estate agent when she was looking for a house in town so we could go to school 9 months of the year. He asked, why do you want a house? And she said, so our children can go to school 9 months. And he said to her, you don't need no house. Your little nigger kids ain't gonna never amount to nothing no how. Those were his remarks. And those remarks stayed with me throughout my life. Your little nigger kids, you don't need no house. Your little nigger kids ain't gonna never amount to nothing. And so for all of these years, that was a motivational statement. Never say never. Never say what you want amount to be. There were 4 of us, and then I'm going back. I get off on a tangent. There were 4 children and that they were getting this house for, as mom had to eventually build from the floor up. Of the 4 children, we did go to school. We did finish high school. 4 finished high school, 4 finished college, 3 got master's degrees, and 2 got PhDs, and you don't go any higher than that in education. So don't ever say what you can't do and what your kids ain't gonna never amount to nothing. We did amount to something. Now, you want to know?
Wow. Now that's the way you start an interview. That is how you put yourself on the page. Yes. Now, my listeners are going to say, if that's how she starts, wow, where are we going to go from here?
Well, I guess we'll go back. I like to share that because that was such a motivational thing throughout my life. I think about it almost every day still when I run into things and I'm reading and I'm seeing what you cannot do or what is being said, you know. And that's why I'm so happy to work with young people, especially those that have had fewer chances and opportunities. But back to my life, where I was born, and all this is part of where I am. I was born on this farm, and you know, we didn't have doctors. And if you had a doctor, he was miles and miles away. So the midwife delivered me and put the wrong name on the birth certificate. She had written Dorothy Ann, and I didn't know that until I was entering college at age, master's, entering college at age 38 or something like that, way up in my years. And when I found out I had been operating under the wrong name all those years. So, but that was nothing. That didn't mean anything. I'm still Mil, you know, we just carried on with Mildred. But the fact that the midwife delivered it was just a sign of the times. And I lived on in the country on the farm. Yeah, I had to go out and get the eggs out of the hen head nest, you know, and we slopped the hogs. We saved the food and put it in a bucket behind the stove, and then that's what you fed your hogs. And each one of us had a cow that we had to milk and had to take care of. Each child had to take care of a cow before you went to school, when you came home. So we had these experiences. Water, which I didn't share. We had the pump water. You had to pump that water. And you carry that water from the pump to the house. And you go through a barbed wire fence. And I have a scar on my leg right now, today, where one of those barbs had kind of ripped my leg as I crossed the barbed wire fence, bringing water to the house. But these are all motivational experiences.
Absolutely.
You
Let
know,
me let me ask you this.
here.
You have so much that we can learn from.
Mhm.
And you have introduced us to some of your early childhood experiences. And that's what we need to know who you are and how you were formed.
Mhm.
So tell us about that world that you grew up in. Your childhood experiences, yes, that make you smile when you think back on them. What was life like in your community growing up?
My life, you know, when I thought about it, I would be sharing with you just a few minutes before we started the interview. I thought, let me get something to show what
Okay.
was like. Number one is this iron that we use. When they use the electric irons now, we had to use this iron on coals.
Flat
I
iron.
like that,
A
you know.
flat iron. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we didn't have the but we had to work. We all had to work. We had to wash, we had to iron. And our food, I just went out and got these things. You know,
Oh my goodness.
we used to have to grind the
Meat.
cha-cha and grind up the meat to make sausage.
That's right.
Yeah, I still
A
have
meat grinder.
a meat grinder. Those are my experiences. I have a part of a churn. We used to,
Oh,
you know, we had the dasher in the middle, and we'd go up and down to churn the milk and make the butter.
yes.
Yes.
Goodness, thank you so much for sharing that. Because life was challenging.
Challenging. Yes.
It wasn't a cakewalk.
No, it wasn't. And we had to wash it with the yeah, the washboard.
Oh, you got a scrub board. Yes.
Yeah. Where we
Isn't
had to
that
scrub the
something?
clothes and then hang them on the line. Use
Yes.
the bluing.
Yes.
So we
With
all had
clothespins.
clothespins, right? So that these were experiences that formed my lifestyle and my motivation and my ability to work. And
Mhm.
the people in the neighborhood, everybody was your parent. Everybody, if you misbehaved, the neighbor could spank you and then tell your mom and dad, and you got another one as when you got home. So you just prayed that they didn't tell. If they don't, please don't tell. Please don't tell.
Don't tell.
Yeah, so I won't get another one. But it was this neighborhood that we grew up in, on the farm. They go out in boats now. We didn't have a boat. We didn't have toys to play with. When it rained, we'd go out in the ditch and take a block of wood and take a stick, and we'd guide the block of wood. That was our boat as we went through this muddy water. We ate what we call crawdads now. They go buy these lobsters. We had the little baby lobster. We used to go out in the back of the house and fish in the canal and catch what we call crawdads. And that was what, we ate. And bullfrogs. What was a bullfrog? It was a great big frog that at night, particularly when it rained, you could hear them. It was almost like a delicacy, and the meat tasted almost like chicken. And when you put that bullfrog in the skillet to cook him, he'd keep jumping. So you were glad. These are some experiences that people have never heard. The outhouse. We talk about the outhouse. When you want to go to the bathroom, we didn't have bathrooms, of course. You went to this house that was away from the house that you had to use, and you used Sears and Roebuck paper and rub
Catalogs.
it together, the catalog. You rub it together to soften it, you know. These are all experiences that formed who we are. And
Yes.
we had our gardens. We grew everything that we needed, and then you canned. Mom would can, had rows and rows of canned goods. And then you had the meat. You killed your hogs, and neighbors would come in for hog killing. We have a picture of my uncle, and then that has 6 hogs hanging that they had killed at the one time. The neighbors had come in, and everybody went home with a little meat, you know. So it was all a neighborhood thing, a get together that was sport, and that was the environment that I grew up in. I had no choice if I went to be on the straight and narrow if I didn't want to be spanked all the time, because everybody was watching at church.
Mm-hmm.
Your neighbor was also your Sunday school teacher. Your school teacher was your Sunday school teacher. When you went to college, when I got into high school, the principal was superintendent of the Sunday school, you know, and so you had choir members, people were intertwined so that wherever you went, there was a mentor. There were professional people that we saw and that we emulated. Oh, I want to be like Dr. So-and-so. I want to be like Mr. So-and-so, you know, so that we had these role models. You mentioned the books. Yes, I didn't get a new book. I don't think I can't remember ever getting a new book in my high school days, elementary high school days, because we got the old books. But we had these teachers that said, whatever's on those pages is what's important. You learn the contents of those pages. And they were immaculately dressed. They didn't wear pants to school with knees cut out. You know, these pants now that the kids and adults are wearing where the knees are all torn out, that was because you couldn't afford to wear anything else. And you were poor, you know, not a style like they have now. So we were taught certain values that followed us all of our lives. I could go forever and ever about who motivated, who formed us, but those were our role models. And
Well, do tell us, who were the people in your community, your influencers?
they were my teachers. Let me give an example, just one example. And my 10th grade teacher and how it had an influence on my coming to California. My 10th grade teacher, Mrs. Stevens, was social studies teacher. And her son, Tom Stevens, who we all grew up, was my classmate. When I found out I was coming to California to this job at Cal State, didn't know anybody, didn't know a soul, didn't know why. And I called Tom. I wrote him and said, I'm coming to California. Can you put me in touch with anyone that can help me find a place to stay? He put me in touch with a friend that was on the board for the community colleges, because he was president of Trade Tech, LA Trade Tech. Mrs. Stevens was immaculately dressed, my 10th grade teacher, and was like another mom to us, to all of us. So she was a great influencer, which also influenced my adult life when I came out here. But there were so many adults that I could point to that influenced my life and that helped me become what I am today. There were just many.
And that's why it is important then and today
Mhm.
with young people to make it clear what is expected of them.
Yes.
Tell me about that feeling of representing your family, your race, your community.
Okay. It was ingrained from the very beginning. You do not do anything that's going to bring shame on your family or on your race. My parents were very prideful people, and my mother, because the tendency at that time was for whites to not give you a title. They wouldn't want to call you Mr. or Ms. You were never grown up. You're always a boy or you were a girl. My mom, when she was married, would not give her first name to anyone. Instead of saying Alma Dalton, she would say, I'm Mrs. Dalton, so, and she would not use her first name. She insisted on being called Mrs. Dalton. There was a pride in my family and peers that you are important, you're somebody important, you demand your respect. That carried through when I came to California, incidentally. And I have to jump to kind of tie this in. When I came out here and they were using first names, the professor would be called, they'd want to call me Mildred. No, I'm not Mildred. As Flip Wilson said, you don't know me that well. I want you call me Dr. Henry. I taught a class for Southern Illinois University. I taught it in San Diego. And at this naval base, I think it was Air Force Base, the men there, and they were all males, white males, say, can we call, I wrote my name, Dr. Mildred Henry, on the board when I entered. And someone said, can we call you Mildred? And I said, of course not. I wrote Dr. Mildred Henry, and I said, I think we are both familiar with the English language. I didn't make a mistake, So I demanded that I be called Dr. Henry, which was part of my upbringing. And my parents were entrepreneurs. My grandfather built a cotton gin, built a farm. They were progressive. So how would they let themselves be demeaned by not demanding respect? It was so that's the environment in which I grew up in, is you are important, demand your respect.
Being in a position to demand respect, it would be a whole nother program for us to talk about today, and our behavior that has become normalized, that does not allow some of us to be able to demand respect. But we're talking about your youth. Tell us about your first racial experience.
My first, I really don't know first, but I can give some examples of some of the first.
Okay.
And one is riding the buses, the public transportation. I know in high school, by that time I was riding the public bus. And then Blacks, African American, what would we call Negroes? I think we would call
Negroes,
it that time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The sign said seat from the rear, whites seat from the front. So that meant that if the whites got on and they seated from the front and blacks got on and seated from the rear, they would have us stand up if a white person got on the bus. I remember sitting on the front row, second row. There was three seats, three people could sit on a seat. There was one white man on the bus. The bus was filled with blacks, with African Negroes. And when I sat, they asked me to get up, although there was a vacant seat, 2 vacant seats there, because there was one white person, one white male sitting there. I got off and walked. I refused to get off and stand up. And so I walked, got off the bus. But you had these type of experiences and then in the movies, we had to go up on the second floor, go in a separate door and go up on the second floor where there were seats on the first floor. Here again, these little nuances that told you were less than, we lived through and had to combat and to be reinforced at home and by these teachers over here that said, don't worry about it. You just showed that you're somebody important. You learn, you get your education. You show that you're worthy to be respected, So you had this constant play going on. People wanting to tell you you're less than, and those that saying you're more than.
Absolutely. So, and the separate water fountains?
Yes. separate water fountains. You had to eat, that was drink. And the fountain was usually by the back door, now that you mention it. It was on one side of the back door. I remember Cress's, SS Cress's store, 5 and 10 cent store, what we call it. On one side was a fountains for white, and on the other side was the fountains for Negroes. And never the twain should meet. You didn't drink out of the wrong fountain. You couldn't eat at a lunch counter. They'd take your money, while you bought merchandise, but you couldn't sit and get a sandwich. It wouldn't serve us. So that was part, my sister related, because I had left the South at that time, when they had the sit-ins in Arkansas and Pine Bluff, when they broke down that, they sat at the lunch counters and they had stuff poured on them, but they kept fighting, they kept sitting, they kept demanding respect. They finally broke that chain that kept them. But yeah, no more separate. And the slogan, separate but equal, never was equal. That was a farce.
Never equal.
Never equal. It was
Tell
all.
me this.
Mhm.
Have you observed, respected adults, Black adults in your community being mistreated and holding their dignity by being called boy, or, you talk about the leaders in the community.
Mhm.
No matter their position, they were still a boy, the white
Absolutely.
people.
Yes.
And I've read about young people, their children and other children, seeing them, observing them being demeaned. Have
Mhm.
you seen that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I have seen that. In fact, it has happened to my father, and I have seen that same scenario where I felt sorry for him, having to be demeaned or to be treated in that manner. Now, it was a different story in our family anyway, for females and males. My mother was a very assertive person. When she was told certain things, she'd put her hands on her hips and say, she'd get it straight. If my dad had done that, they would have lynched him from the tree. So I even had a student at Cal State, not Cal State, Southern Illinois University, I think was when I was doing teaching there, asked me why our society, the Black society, seemed to be matriarchal, that the females were the strong. And I said, because, the same thing you're saying, the men were demeaned. And if they had done or said some of the things the females said, they would have been beaten, lynched, punished. Whereas females, some of them, even some females were punished, but for the most part, the female could get along. And it was hurtful to see the male have to be treated in that manner and to try to be made to feel less than. Yeah.
And people like to say that slavery was back then, long ago, but the residue of slavery persists today, and our men being demeaned. It seems that they have still not gotten the break that they deserve, even when they are strong fathers, strong community leaders. But there is still that reputation of weakness in our men. Much of it is a myth, but in a society that thrives on disarming men, because the men are the warriors. And so you have to quiet and disarm the men if you can. If you get the father out of the home, then you've almost won the contest. Not saying, just like, you and I have been single parents,
Mhm.
but the men continue to be traumatized in a way that may be disproportional. I don't know. Maybe that's me. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely correct. I agree with you. I see it, I've seen it over and over. That's one of the reasons why at the PAL Center, the organization that we formed, that I organized, I have made sure that we had Black males in positions of authority so that they could work with these young Black males that are coming along, and they could be role models for them. And can't think of a time when there was not a Black male hired there. That's what I'm looking at. You can call me prejudiced, you can call me anything you want to. I don't care.
Don't care.
Because I have the environment, I've lived the environment, and I could see what was happening. That scenario from what do we say, from the cradle to the grave anyway, from going straight to and incarceration.
Yes.
That it has always been that scenario of breaking up the home, breaking up the family for Black families. It's harder to keep the Black families together because the male was targeted. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just giving my own personal ideas, was targeted to make him feel inferior and make others think that he was inferior. So that break up the home, you break up the family. It's been a rough road, and it still continues. Look at the overpopulation of Black males in the prison system.
That's right.
And even now today, when you talk about, and I'm going out on a limb, but I've never been, that doesn't matter. I always go on a limb. But they talked about some males up near where I live that committed suicide by hanging. I'm saying, oh no, we still have lynching going on. I have not seen a Black man that's going to hang himself from a tree to commit suicide. It just does not happen. And it happened in 2 instances, not too far from where I am. I won't call the area. But the Black male, as far as I'm concerned, has always been mistreated, has never been respected as he should have been.
Because we know that is how we break the back of a family and a community. It isn't because they're not strong, but it's because they are beaten down. And yet, we'll talk about it, they rose. They rise. They have done, read the history. They have done amazing things. They may not have been given credit. They may not have been respected enough for it to be universally celebrated. But our men have been phenomenal.
Yes.
But back to you and race as an adult. In all the places that you've lived, Arkansas, Missouri, Minnesota, Illinois, California, as an adult, have you experienced racism in those places?
Oh, yes. Almost every place that I've gone. One particular, let's just start. I've already discussed Arkansas. Let's go to Minnesota.
Okay.
Minnesota, I went to when I went to Minnesota, I went to apply for a job at one of the major department stores. And I was typing, I had just finished school. I was typing 90 words a minute. This was a job for clerk typist. I applied Montgomery Ward. That's what it was.
Oh, remember Montgomery Ward.
Montgomery Ward, St. Paul, Minnesota. I applied, I went, and I filled out the application, sat down, to be called back, but then to take the test. And nobody, I sat there, other people came up of white, no African Americans came up, and they were taken back in the back. And I was just sitting there waiting. They'd come and they'd take them to the back. And so I finally went up to the desk and said, I've been waiting. Am I going to be called for a test? I see people coming. They said, oh, all the positions have been filled. They have? Yes. Okay. So I went home and I called and I said, I wanted to know if you have any positions, but oh yes, we have plenty. Come on out. Now that had to be out and out racism. No other reason. I was not even given a chance to take the test, which I would have passed. Was no doubt about it. So there have been instances. That's just one instance, but there have been instances when I was out. One of my jobs at the graduate level, and I won't call any names, but I had to fight to get my promotions, to get my job. Whereas other people that didn't do as much as I did were promoted and gone to higher levels. I had to call in the state educational agency to evaluate my being denied promotion. And I won the case. And it had to be nothing, and I can't give all the details, but it was racism, yeah, on someone's part. So it's still very evident.
What about Missouri?
What about what?
Missouri.
Missouri. Well, in Missouri, it wasn't too bad. Oh, wait a minute. That was a separate medical facility when I had trouble with my feet. And I could not go to the hospital to seek treatment there in Missouri. That was an all Black hospital where they had training Black doctors. Homer Phillips was a medical facility. And that's where I went to get treatment for my feet at the Homer Phillips Hospital, which was a good thing because they eventually did. There was training for Black doctors all over, and they did help me with my feet, but I could not get the treatment elsewhere. Same thing in Arkansas, separate facilities, medical facilities. You couldn't go to the white, quote unquote, white hospital. So everywhere that I've gone that I can think of, yes, that was prejudice then and still exists today.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about now. California, your liberal state, that I have read that not only is there white discrimination, but discrimination by other ethnicities. Has that been your experience?
Not that I can think of offhand. I've heard of it, but as far as personal experience, it's mostly been white discrimination against me that I'm aware of. I'm sure it exists. I hear it, I've heard of it, but personal experience, yeah. It seems that, and when we're looking at society, it seems that for some reason, people can come from elsewhere, other countries, and come from elsewhere and still be placed on a higher level of respect here in this country when we built the dadgum country. That Blacks are not given the same respect that they should have been given. That people can come in and be accepted more than we are.
And I think that's why there is a resentment. You know, Black people have been lovers of other people. We are so embracing and accepting. It's part of our makeup.
Yes.
But then when we experience being set aside so that others, perhaps very much less entitled, as you say, because we invested in and built this country, when we're set aside because people are preferring them over us, you will become resentful.
Yes.
And that's just one more issue that America needs to work through. Let me ask, in your teaching, in your instruction, in your counseling, how have you used your experience and knowledge to foster racial reconciliation?
I taught classes at Cal State San Bernardino. And one of my favorite classes was multicultural counseling. And I accepted that and taught that class for the 15 years I was at that institution, because I felt an obligation to make sure that those people coming through there to be counselors were well aware of the racial differences, the way the racial, the nuances that take place in different ethnic groups. I required my students to go into the community to do some field work experience.
Wow.
And particularly in a low-income area, so that those people that lived up in the hills and the mountains and affluent areas had to do some field work in the hood, you know. And I was told by one of the teachers, one of the counselors, when I did a fieldwork visit, he said, "Dr. Henry, I'm so glad you had us do that fieldwork." He said, "Otherwise, I would have quit my job." He was a counselor at Martin Luther King Middle School. And he lived up in the mountains somewhere. He never would have been able to have related had he not had this experience. So I have used my teaching, because my first job, when I first went to work at this college, this university, I could tell the atmosphere. There had never been an accepted African-American where I was. And the idea was that I was not going to be competent. I made sure that I was competent and more than. In fact, I had to be more than, which is what we were always told.
Yes.
To be more than in order to be considered equal. You have to be more than. And so I would be working my class was at night, ending at 10 o'clock. I'd still be there working. It became kind of a known thing among security. Dr. Henry is working, be sure she gets safely to the parking lot, you know, at night. They just kind of adopted me because they know I'm going to be doing extra work to make sure that this sister is going to have her act together.
Yes,
you know?
yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that's why when I was denied a promotion, saying that I did not have enough professional growth, I think was what it was said, I said, "Oh no, the fight is on."
The wrong one, baby.
Oh yeah, because I had set up a whole educational system in the community. I had organized a whole system. We were given high school diplomas, GED, ESL. We were training and teaching, tutoring elementary kids, tutoring high school. I had an upward bound program, sending kids to college, set up a whole educational system. Then they're going to tell me I didn't have enough professional growth? No.
And with that, tell us about your program.
Okay. When I came to Cal State, came to California and Cal State, I asked the community, what could I do to help? I had been helped along the way. Everywhere I went, there was somebody that was in my corner that motivated me. So I said, what can I do? I was told to look at the dropout rate particularly among African-American males. I looked at the dropout rate, totally unacceptable. So I started looking around, and I talked with some people, and I was told by that to start an organization, I need to have a nonprofit. I had no idea. I need to do and get a nonprofit organization to apply for grants to start to get money, because that's the only way you're going to be able to start.
That's right.
And so I formed this nonprofit organization from asking different people, people that were well respected in the community. And then we formed our nonprofit, and then I wrote my first grant application, asking how can I do, what do I need to do to improve it, whatever, submitted it. And the first project that we were funded for was a youth employment program, summer youth employment program funded by. And that was in 1985. I came in, I started working at Cal State in 1983. We were organized in 84 and funded in December. So 85 was the first program that we started, summer youth. And then from there on, we always wrote grants. This is, I don't know if this will show that well, but this is one of the flyers, the things that we had. Wow. We had as many as 11 programs operating at the same time at this at this community organization. That was the educational program this year, and I didn't have enough professional growth. And then we were training people all over in the community. And let
me jump in. What I read was not just education, not just employment, but drug education and prevention, homeless shelters, and other community-based services.
Yes, we had for drug education, I was so proud. We had a drug mobile, what we call an
anti-drug mobile. I like that.
We traveled, we went around, and we had the displays of drug paraphernalia, what to avoid, gang paraphernalia. In fact, a gang member where we were parked on, I don't know if it was the neighborhood, a parking lot or a church parking lot, but anyway, a gang member came on and said, that's my jacket that the police took from me. He said, but I'm gonna let you keep it. Maybe you can keep my brother from getting into it, getting into the game.
Oh, you know what? Testimonies.
Yeah. So that we had people coming in to see the evils of drug involvement and gang involvement. And for homeless, so that drug mobile was even on TV. It was featured. We took it to Pasadena, to the community college there. They asked for it to stay an extra day, because it was unique. And I got the idea from DC. I had gone to Washington, DC, and I saw one there. Drug mobile. So, I like that idea. Went back, wrote a proposal.
Take it home.
Got it funded. And for the homeless youth, here again, I was a reader because we were able to write a grant and get funded for an Upward Bound program. I became a reader for the government, reading other proposals. So they would fly me, they would bring me into DC or wherever we were, and we would read proposals. I read for Health and Human Services, I think was the department, and they had homeless shelters. That's what we were reading, grants for homeless shelters. And I said, oh, I like that. And of course, you could never take copies, but you can remember what the program was. And when I came back home, I wrote a proposal for our youth that were aging out of the system, because when they get, they have no place to go. So we wrote a shelter to provide shelter for youth aging out of the system, and we were funded. So I had a homeless shelter started in Fontana, set it up at the first one was set up at a former motel. because the kids will have their own individual rooms in the kitchen and all. But anyway, that was our homeless shelter. Then we started one in Rialto, and we had two in San Bernardino. So that was another branch, a professional growth that they said I didn't have.
You know what? They could have come up with something else if they wanted to make a case, but not on that score.
Yeah, so that was, yes, we had the
I'm
drug.
going to announce, I know you are one of the most modest people that I have talked to recently. Humble, but bear with me.
Uh-oh.
You were honored by the San Bernardino City Unified School District with naming the Dr. Mildred Henry Elementary School that opened in 2013. Did that feel like vindication for a life of overcoming?
It felt like vindication. I thought, let me see if I have what I might have. I don't know if I have a picture.
Look at that! Yes!
There's something on my screen and I don't know how to get it off, but anyway.
No, I can see it.
You can see it.
Look at the Trailblazers.
That's
Home
right.
of the Trailblazers. You know what?
Yes.
I'm waiting for the book somebody go write about you. But we gonna get to your book very shortly.
Okay. Yes.
This is too good. We gotta keep going.
Interestingly, I didn't know about that. One of my friends that was employed at the school, at the PAL Center, the organization that I started, asked me, Dr. Henry, they're naming some new schools. Can I submit your name? I said, nope. I do not like politics. Don't want any part of politics. Do not put my name in. And then once we were in a meeting and he walked, and then the director came up to me and said, I'd like to make an announcement. The financial director. He said, the San Bernardino Unified School District has just named a school, the Dr. Mildred, and my teeth fell on the floor. Not quite.
Yeah.
But I was so shocked that because I had no idea that George Lee was his name, that he had turned my name in. He had gotten all these signatures from all these people and letters of support and all, and they had named the school the Dr. Mildred Henry. I was shocked. I had no idea. And I've been just blessed. So the school, they're wonderful. And let me tell you, I told the district I wanted a Black male principal to open my school. I made that request. Guess who opened the school? The Black male principal. And he did a marvelous job. And they're called scholars, not students. They have they say, I am going to college. I am what is it? I am smart. They have a saying that they use. I am so pleased.
Because they're trailblazers.
They're trailblazers. That's the name they came up with, and we came up with. They're trailblazers. And I
got a question for you.
I was a trailblazer. What?
Yes. My question is, what would your mother say?
My mother would say, as she did every time we came up with an accomplishment. She was down there in the real estate agent's face. My kids ain't gonna amount to nothing. My kids ain't gonna amount to nothing, huh? That's what she would say. That's what she would do. My kids mounted to something. we had just an example of the support we received when my brother was inducted into the Army, into service. He went into the Marines. He was in the band at the University of Michigan. So when he went into service, they were going to put him in the elite band. He had to have a new horn, a new trumpet. And he didn't know where he was going to get it. He wrote mom said, we'll get you the trumpet. They wouldn't sell her a horn in Pine Bluff where we lived. She had to go out of the city to buy a horn at an inflated price. But she said, you go right ahead. We're going to get you that horn. She got the horn, sent it to him. And the neighbor across the street came and told us she saw my brother on the movie screen, marching with the Marine band with this new horn that mother insisted on getting. We're going to get it. Don't worry about it. You'll get that horn. And he got it. And here he was marching.
Thank you. Our families, our history is full of those extended family stories, those sacrificial stories.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks my heart because America does not know who we are.
Yes.
And what we came from. They still believe the myths of brokenness, the myths of lack, the myths of inferiority. But we hold our head up because we've experienced those stories.
Yes.
And we know who we are.
We know who we are. And we pass it to our generations. We tell our children, this is who you are. Great kings and queens. When I saw this great kings and queens.
Oh, yes, I got that. I got the posters too.
That reinforced to me. Don't tell me I'm the descendant of slaves. I'm the descendant of kings and queens.
There you go. There you go.
Great kings and queens.
Achievements that they bestowed on the world.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Learn our history.
Learn the history. Absolutely.
Okay, education is seen as one of the solutions to improving racial equality. Another is economics. You'll tell us more about that when you talk about your book. Let's touch on the racial wealth and income gaps. Black Americans lag behind whites and other ethnic groups in wealth, despite our history of overcoming and achievement. Wealth building takes generations. We all know about Black Wall Streets all across America. But while integration allowed Blacks civil rights, dignity, access to the seats in Kresge, it also impacted support of Black businesses, schools, and communities. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are there here again, is it's never been equality. For the same job, Blacks were paid less than the wages that were paid to whites in too many cases. I have been in positions that I found at a later time that for the same work I was doing, other people were being paid more. There has been inequitable treatment throughout the system. I was asked to teach a class at a distance at night in Palm Springs, to be honest, class at night. I'd be traveling on the freeways, going home at 10:30 at night. I found later that white professors were being paid, they were spending the night in being paid by the university, their night accommodations. I had been denied. I asked to have my accommodations paid for so I could spend the night and would not have to travel the distance because I was going from a long distance at night and female by myself. They told me no. And I said, okay, then I will not teach that class any longer. So then they came across and paid for my accommodations. But see, had I not found that out, here it was inequitable treatment. And I found that with paying salaries and with other things. So when they talk about that we don't have the wealth, look at them. I talked about Montgomery Ward. Look at the jobs that we have. But the same positions, we are not paid equal pay in too many cases. And when we do, many of us have the opportunity to become, like in the case where my grandfather, who was the son of slaves, built this farm, had this cotton gin, had this store, was a great entrepreneur, achievements that had never been done before. They burned him out. How could we, he was not able to hold on. They burned him out 3 times, the Ku Klux Klan burned out the farm. So when they talk about Blacks not achieving, I could always get into, I could refute that. What are the reasons why we've been treated inequitably? People that come from other countries did the same work that African Americans were doing here in this country. They were paid higher wages than my people. And that has been traditional. That's not new. It's not, and it still exists.
And that leads to my next question.
Okay.
How many Black people do you know who have benefited from significant economic inheritances?
Wow. Significant inheritances. Very few. For some reason, our inheritance, this is a question I've never really been asked. We have not passed on inheritance. This was something my parents, my mom really taught and talked about, passing on. She was determined to hold on to the farm because the system tried to take the farm many times. While we were on our boundary lines, the white neighbors would come over and work part of our land. And of course, if you stayed on it so long, it became theirs. We had to go to court several times to make the neighbors get off our land. So in addition to legally taking our land, we've had to try to hold on to our inheritance, to pass it on. We haven't, and too often we haven't been successful. People like in the farm, Black farmers, let me give you an example. We have released our land out to farmers. The Black farmer, this example, I went to visit the person who was farming our land because I heard he might not be able to farm that year. When I went to visit him, he said, we're not able to get our loan from the government. We have paid off all of our last years, but we haven't been able to get
their seed money.
The
There's seed money. And seed money is to plant the next year's crop.
And absolutely, and they couldn't get it. I had to go and I inquired and found out there was no real excuse they could give. I went to my congressman, my California congressman, who then talked to my Arkansas congressman, who then talked to the Farmers Administration, and the bank before we were able to get the money released for the Black farmer to farm our land.
And this was not 1950.
Nope.
This was not 1960.
Nope.
This was not 1970.
No.
Because you got to California in the 80s.
There you go. It was in the 90s.
This was in the 90s.
This was in the 90s.
So when people tell us to stop complaining about slavery,
yes,
as though after slavery we became equal.
No, I didn't. And see, if I had not been determined, because the man had paid off the bills, his sons were ready. They were ready to plant, ready to farm. It still exists today. It's still last year they were talking about how the Black farmers were not able. I read something
losing their farms.
Yes, losing their farms because they're not able to get funded by the government, who is designed to help the Black farmer. I read an article just 2 days ago about what was the inequitable treatment of the Black farmer. It still exists. You're right. It's not the 1800s or 1900s.
And who's speaking for them? Who is speaking for them?
No one that I know of. Like in my case, I had to go to my California congressman to put some pressure on Arkansas. I don't know who's speaking for the Black farmer.
But yet a whole lot of people are saying that Black Lives Matter.
I could talk about that too. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about when I give my the 5 things.
All right. Then let's move on to a question I have to ask.
Yes.
Because I'm just curious.
Please.
Do you really believe that humankind can overcome racial and ethnic resentments and antagonisms? Why?
I think it can if we have sincerity in what we're doing. I think it can be overcome. It will be an ongoing battle. But I think if we get the open-mindedness and we really are sincere in working together, I think it could be overcome. It will be, hadn't thought about that, but I think it can if we get the right minds going.
Keep hope alive. Now, let's talk about your life testimony. From the ashes I rise. Dare to do the impossible. Bear with me. Born of the ashes from the Ku Klux Klan torching and burning the Dalton family's cotton gin and family store 3 times.
3 times.
You wrote that it was from those ashes that I rose. Tell us about your book.
My book, From the Ashes I Rise, was there it is. It's in soft.
Yes. Love it.
I see it there. From the Ashes I Rise. I wanted to tell that because as a child, I, with these eyes, saw the store burning in front of my house. I saw the church that had been set afire so that the embers could come over and burn our store. Because by that 3rd time, we had guards placed around the perimeters of the farm, so they couldn't get in to burn us, but they set fire to the church on a windy night so the embers would come over. The first time they burned us out, my grandfather rebuilt a bigger and better gin. Second time they burned us, we rebuilt. By the 3rd time, of course, we were redlined, what you call it.
Can't
Yeah,
get insurance.
couldn't get insurance, so we could not rebuild. But they didn't kill the spirit. That still, that store that was there, that my grandfather, the son of slaves, he built this empire, this store, this gin, gave jobs to people, funded the neighborhood when they needed food and didn't have money until the end of the crops. He provided them with merchandise, and then they would pay at the end of when they harvested their crops. That's why the jealous uh, white folk that had a gin burned us out. It was confirmed by the arsonist. The name of the person that paid him to burn us, to set us afire. He had a gin 3 miles from us, and he admitted. I mean, the arsonist admitted, not the person, but they burned the gin. But my parents and my people said, but you can't kill the spirit. We're going to be educated. They're still going to we're going to take our place in society. And I see the picture on your wall, the gin. You can see the cotton gin. At that time, there was a truck that had on that picture, a truck that has cotton on the back of it. And they would bring the cotton to be ginned. That same truck would take kids to school, talk about inequality. They had buses for the white kids that would transport them to school. Black kids had to walk those dusty roads for miles and miles to try to get to school, to get an education. So if they got as far as our place, they could ride, the trucks or the buses. I mean, not the buses, there were no buses for Blacks. The buses, talk about self-esteem. The buses for white kids would drive by, kick up the dust in the faces of those Black kids that were walking to school. I can just relate these things that just break your heart when you think what some of our people have had to go through to survive, to get where we are. And then to be told we're less than, oh, no, I will never accept that. We've been through a lot. But anyway, I got sidetracked now.
That's all right. Because everything
being able to pass on. It's been hard to hold on to what we had in order to pass on an inheritance, because we were always headed off at the pass, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
Right.
So there hadn't been too much inheritance that look how they burned out, like I said, walls,
What feedback have you gotten about the book? Those who have read the book.
Those that have read the book have been very positive. They're saying that it brought back memories. When I talk about the slop jar, who has heard of an outhouse and a slop jar?
Yeah.
And as I was showing the iron, that people that today don't know what we've been through. This brought back memories of churning. And so everybody that has read the book has been very positive about it. It tells you from whence we came and where we are going. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. It's a long travel, but we're going to get there.
You know what? Coming from you, now, I may wink at somebody who just saying that, but coming from you, you making me a subscriber.
Well, I talk about just an example. There's a young man at the Powell Center now that's now our CEO that saw what I was doing. He used to watch. I didn't know I was being watched. You never know. He would watch how I operated at the Powell Center and how we were building and how we were helping people and what we were doing. And it motivated him to become part of what we're doing. He is now the CEO and carrying on and working with these young men, particularly the young Black students. And it hurts me when I look at the diminishing number of Black males that are in the educational system, that's something we need to really pay attention to. They're being channeled somewhere, but they're fewer and fewer in that educational pipeline, more in the criminal pipeline.
Yes, that pipeline.
Yeah. So anyway, there's work to be done. And,
Amen and amen.
and
I thank you for giving so much of your time and so much and sharing so much. But I must ask you, what 5 things do you believe will impact improved race and ethnic relations?
you know, Sunday I heard a sermon that really opened my eyes to something. This lady, it was missionary Sunday, and she said, and I thought, this is true. Number one, we must love ourselves, because we've been taught, don't to be modest, don't do this, don't do that, don't brag or whatever. But what she was saying, that in order to love others, and love is a big word, is the key, but in order to love someone else and work with someone else, I need to love myself. Look at me first. What time is it? It's time for me to wake up, time to get my mind right, which is a saying from my young man. Get your mind right. If we want to improve race relations, then let's get a mindset first that we're going to get together. Too often, and that's another number 2 that I'll be getting. I don't know what number I'm on. Anyway, we too often will say, one of the things we want to do is make sure that we are emotionally ready to work with someone. It's getting together. Number 2 is getting our mind right, but let our word be our bond. Don't mean it if you don't say it if you don't mean it. For an example, for Black Lives Matter, I was asked to speak to a group of kind of affluent, I guess, people up in the mountain. And they asked how they could help. And I told them to come into the hood, offer some help down there. We have an organization down there. There's a young man that writes beautifully. You have a newspaper. You have mentor him, publish some of his work, help him to become a better writer or whatever. So volunteer some time. If you want to really help, volunteer some time. Never heard another word from him. Okay. So sincerity is one of the, if you don't mean it, don't say it. Don't say what you want to do. Third, I would suggest that we get a project, that we have people get together and do a project. It can be a community project. It can be working with young people. It can be, but maybe you can even have community, you guys work together over here in a job. Maybe you can have launch or form an organization and select a project that you can work on together. Let it be, and then be sincere about it. And let it be helping young people. Let it be helping somebody to become. Help them to become. You can have small discussions. Number 4, friends, neighbors, form these discussion groups and select this project, and together be open to opportunity. Be ready to experience some discomfort and pain, because if you're telling the truth and you really want to help, you're going to be, somebody's going to try to discourage you. They'll talk. Talk is cheap. Show me some action. So speak your truth, The 5th thing I would think, if we're going to improve race relations, is look at the political parameters. Go to the ballot box. Somebody that wants to discredit equality and say there is no racial problem, doesn't want to do anything about it, get them out, vote them out, kick them out.
Vote them out.
Go to the ballot box. That's the best place to improve race relations, is at the ballot box. Those that don't believe in equality, get rid of them. So I don't know how, what they all kind of mesh together, the 5 thoughts, but love yourself, work together, help get a project where you really sincerely work together and evaluate it. Be willing to get out of your comfort zone. If you go into the comfort, work with that homeless person, work with that kid that has never had the opportunity to go at the Palestine. What we're doing now, they're taking these kids, they go on field trips. They take them on college campuses, motivating them. They've taken them out of San Bernardino. Some kids have never been out of San Bernardino. They've been taking them to Magic Mountain, to SeaWorld, to look at these animals, and they've taken it as a class project. But be willing to step out of your comfort zone and help somebody, and let it be somebody of a different race, of different environment, a different cultural environment. And be sincere about it. Don't say it if you're not going to do it.
And so, finally, go to that voting booth.
Go to that should be at first. That's another thing. My mom was told, a little sassy something. My mom was told she was helping people vote, and taking them to the polls now. And she was told, she was teaching, they told her, you cannot do that. You will lose your job if you help people go vote. She put her hands on her hip and say, God gave me this job, he'll give me another one. And she kept right on helping people vote and taking them to the polls. She didn't lose her job. She was just being threatened, But she
That's beautiful.
God gave me this job, he'll give me another one. So she kept right on helping people vote and arranging carpools to help people go to the polls and vote. I'm a strong believer in vote. I never missed a vote, never.
All right. Well, you know what, Dr. Mildred Henry, I feel like your mama is sitting right next to you in this interview, and I welcome her too. And I thank her for her contributions. Tell us, where can we find a copy of your book?
Oh, the book is on Amazon, and you can just put in the title, From the Ashes I Rise, and it shows up on your, and I'm not, this is not my forte. I'm not good at all these. I wrote the book because I really wanted it known about the history so that we never forget. And the only way to do it was to write it. So, but it is found on Amazon. And if anybody wants, you have any problems, I can give my phone number.
No, we're not going to do
don't
that.
Do that. Okay.
No.
Go to Amazon. It's on.
Go to Amazon. And
go to Amazon.
They can Google
the title. And I'll put in my name.
They can Google everything else. They can Google that, but you don't need anybody worrying you on the telephone.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Go to Amazon. It's there.
There you go. Thank you so much, love. And the reason why you wrote the book is why you've done everything else in your life, because if you need somebody to get it done, Mildred Henry is the one who will do it.
Well, I'll try, especially if it's something I'm particularly interested in. Let me share this one more thing.
Yes, go right ahead.
When I was teaching a class in San Diego, I was at the, my classes are always at night. I was sitting at a table eating, and in comes this tall, stately Native American. Just and I'm saying, whoa, and he had his wife and little baby, and I was so impressed with the way he looked, and I walked up to him, I said, and asked him if he would speak to my students in my class, and he said he'd love to, except he wouldn't be there. He was only there for a powwow. It happened to have been Russell Means, who was known with that, the American, it was AIM, American Indian movement. Yeah.
Okay.
That occupied the occupation. Anyway, I went to a powwow, the first time I went to a powwow, and I was so impressed with how they kept their culture together and was proud of it and displaying their culture, the powwow. And I have a friend, in fact, now that's a supervisor. No, he's in the state legislature now. He was the county supervisor. He spoke at the PAL Center, and every time he'd come, he would always do do his culture, bring his culture in first, sing the song dance. Yeah, he would always start with that. We as a people must be proud of our culture. We've got to do the same thing. And so as far as the book is concerned, you'll find quite a bit of culture in it, because I am culture, crazy, you can call it. I really believe in continuing to praise our culture and carry it on, because if we don't bring it to the next generation, who will?
Who
Yeah.
will?
Who will? Yeah.
And while everything you have said has been poignant, I think that final comment, defining ourselves and knowing who we are. Thank you so much,
Well,
Dr. Mildred Henry.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share. Congratulations on your program.